Thank you so much for joining the session. I was told that I'm brave to do this session alone. I think it's really cool to have the space to talk about my project, and I'm really grateful to the festival for giving me this space. So my name is Milena Marin. I work at Amnesty International. I run a project in Amnesty that I'll spend at least half an hour talking to you about, so I'm not going to introduce it now. We have plenty of time to talk about it. I've been at the festival for at least 4 years, and it's one of my favorite events because it's in Perugia, because you have so many amazing people in the room, because you have such amazing conversations. So I'm really grateful to be here again. And thank you for joining the session. So I'm going to talk about how Amnesty International has been using crowdsourcing technologies to work on big data and engage lots amounts of people to do small tasks for us. So yeah, I'll try to keep the presentation brief so that we can hopefully have as much as possible a conversation at the end. I was also told that they are grateful if we leave the room a little bit earlier, not exactly at 1. All right, so why we do these kind of projects? We do it because researchers, scientists, investigators, these days face a data overload problem. We have so much information that we could use in our investigations, in our work, in our research, and it's almost impossible to get through all of this ourselves. So I've put here a picture of a pile of documents, but it's a metaphor for all the social media information that is available online, all the videos that are available on YouTube, all the leaks that we see are happening, and investigators and researchers are inundated with data, and it's impossible for us to go through everything and really include it in a meaningful way in our work. So I think all of you might empathize with us. If you did freedom of information requests and received like pile of documents, if you tried to use videos from YouTube, if you tried to use any social media information, you might empathize with this data overload and the feeling that you will never be able to get through all of it. So one solution that we've experimented with in Amnesty, it's microtasking. So microtasking is a type of crowdsourcing where you get a large task, such as analyzing a very large satellite imagery, or processing 3,000 documents, or any large task that can be split into small tasks or microtasks and distributed to the internet to users that can help you do small things, but really meaningful things that add up to a whole research and data processing project. So I'll go through some examples before going through the process we've used in Amnesty International. You might know La Nación. They've been here a few years. They are not here now. They are an amazing news organization from Argentina. And they have a project called Voz Data. It means your data. So what they are trying to do is to liberate data, create open data sets from data that is closed, that is inaccessible. So one example of projects they had, and they run it every year, is MP expenses, politicians' expenses. You know that often transparency laws require politicians to publish their expenses, and very often these are receipts and documents that are maybe scanned, they are badly scanned, they come in different formats, and it's just impossible to make sense of them. It's impossible to process all these documents to see who spent what, who had the biggest expense in the government. Cumulatively, politicians X, how much they spent compared to politician Y. So you have the pile of documents and you want to transform them into structured data so that you can run analysis, you can understand what's happening in there. So they built this project, Voz Data, where they liberate documents, they engaged people, and just to show you the results, in very short time they managed in 2015 to liberate over 2,000 documents and to cumulatively understand expenses in the value of $34 million. So now, again, from like a pile of documents, they manage to have structured data they can analyze and they come up with trends. This has also been at times negative for journalists and especially for advocacy organizations, because once politicians realize that people can do that and they can actually understand the data they open, they closed it. So they say, okay, we're not publishing the expenses anymore. If you can actually understand what they mean, we're not publishing them anymore. Another really cool project that comes from journalism was Madison from the New York Times. I don't know if anybody, the developer of this project used to again come to the festival quite often, so you might know Jackie. This was a project to engage audiences of the New York Times to analyze their historical ads. So you might have heard about the New York Times building an amazing archive and building systems to digitize this archive. So every article, every text they ever published is digitized. So it's available to search, it's available to understand. But one piece of content that was really, really hard to digitize were the ads. It was hard to digitize because ads came in very different formats, very different type fonts, very different illustrations, and it was really hard for them to classify, categorize, and really digitize these ads. So they launched in about 2014, 2015, they launched this project where they asked their audiences to look at the ads and tell them what the ads are about. So they processed ads since the early 20s up until the current days. And now they have like an amazing archive of historical ads that are classified, categorized, and that are actually useful to historians. And another project that I want to quickly tell you about before going into the example is our own project at Amnesty International. So this was a project that we launched in 2016. It was called Decode Darfur. We had evidence that in Darfur, in 2016, villages were still being burned down to the ground. So although many people consider Darfur to be an old conflict of the early 2000s, we demonstrated that it's still an active conflict. Our researchers managed to comb satellite imagery and demonstrate by showing before and after pictures, demonstrating that villages are indeed being burned down to the ground, people are being displaced. And we managed to document with our own researchers quite a lot of villages like this, but we had this suspicion that is happening across the country. So we wanted to process more satellite imagery. We wanted to do not just 3,000 square kilometers that our researchers could do manually. We wanted to see whether we can understand the whole of Darfur, and maybe we can understand the whole of Darfur over time. So we engaged people to help us map Darfur. So we showed them a small piece of satellite imagery, and we asked them to click on the squares where they see villages. And in a second step, we also asked them to tell us whether the villages have been destroyed. So all these projects are really amazing at engaging people. All these projects had tens of thousands of people participating. Decode Darfur alone for Amnesty had 20,000 people, giving us a total of 9,000 hours of contribution. So that is the equivalent of somebody working full-time for 8 years. It's not that we would have taken 8 years to do this work, but that's how much time they gave us. People are extremely dedicated. The minute you give them something that is meaningful and you show them a value, you show them why they should contribute, why it's important to have this data, why is it important to human rights research, people are keen to participate. So that's why I called the session, big data. You can process big data, you can have an amazing engagement, and it's valuable for research. So what I'm going to do next, I'm going to take you through one of our projects, a recent project that we finished, we wrapped up at the beginning of this year. We ran last year and then ran the analysis at the beginning of this year. Because this project has been, has a beginning and an end, I'm going to take you a little bit through the steps we took to set up a project like this. And then I'm going to tell you a little bit about the most recent project we have, which Sam gave you pieces of paper about. Oh, before that, yeah, that's a framework we use. So basically, using microtasking, using this type of crowdsourcing, we can process any kind of data. We can process pictures, documents, videos, audio, SMS, maps, any kind of data you can imagine about different types of issues. So these are human rights, very specific human rights issues, but media organizations might have issues that they investigate that are similar to this or different. And then we can engage people to do things like classifying, comparing, counting, digitizing. So this is, if you want, a bit of a framework we developed at the beginning of the projects just to give us a sense of what is possible. And I found that really useful in discussing with researchers. You might find it useful discussing with your colleagues, investigators, into what kind of issue you want to investigate, what kind of data you need, and can you engage a community of volunteers to help you structure that data, organize that data, make it ready for you to analyze, visualize, to include in your reports and in your pieces. So yeah, the project that I want to tell you about was called Decode Oil Spills. So this was a project that was zooming into the Niger Delta in Nigeria. This is one of the most polluted regions of the world. It's extremely rich in oil, and there are lots of companies that are exploiting oil there. As you know, Nigeria is not a rich country, but these companies are having huge profits from exploiting oil on the ground. Every year, there are hundreds of spills in this region. It's a small region and it's affected by spills every single year. Hundreds of spills, destroying the livelihood of people, contaminating their water, their farming. So these people rely on the ground for their livelihoods, and the ground is completely polluted and contaminated. There's companies that have no accountability, they don't clean up the spills, and there's no justice for the victims. So Amnesty has a very long tradition on working on the Niger Delta, and we keep pressuring Shell and Eni and other companies that are working on the ground to do better, to maintain their pipelines better, to secure their pipelines better so that people don't tap into the pipelines to steal oil. So we're doing quite a lot of advocacy work, but we never really had the data. Back in 2014, we managed, through a lot of advocacy and pressure, to get them to publish some of this data. So as a result of our work, and as you know, governments do the same. They give you like some peanuts, they publish some data, but they publish it in a format that is not really accessible. So that's what Shell and Eni did with us. We asked them to be more transparent, to give us more information about the spills. So they published on their website spills. Shell published since 2011 and Eni published since 2014. All the other companies operating in the region are not publishing anything. So we had something to start with. But the data was messy. So there was this website, and we could download pictures of the spills and investigation reports. The investigation reports are scanned PDFs. They are filled in by hand, scanned, and uploaded on the website. If you worked with data, you know that's your nightmare. That's something you can't use. So I'll tell you the story on how we went from piles of documents like this and pictures of oil spills like this into a structured data set like this. So nightmare, nightmare, dream. So the first thing that we wanted to do, so knowing that we want to engage people to help us liberate data from these documents, the first thing we wanted to do was define the task. What is that we want people to do for us? We want people to read these documents. What information do we want them to extract from the documents? These are 9 pages long documents, very, very, very dense in information. So we needed to, obviously, we can't overwhelm people. Like if you want to do engagement, you want to make it as easy as possible for people to participate. So you can't overwhelm people. You can't tell them, read 9 pages and transcribe every single word on this page. You have to give them an easy way to participate. So I did quite a lot of workshops with our researchers to get them to really narrow down what is the most valuable information in these spills. And not just what is their instinct, what they think could be useful, because we all have instincts, like we think that could be useful, but really asking them, no, but how are you going to use this data? So imagine you have the data, what are you going to do with it? So that's how, through several workshops, we managed to narrow down to the most valuable bits of information in the document. And these were around the cause of the spill. It was important. The cause of an oil spill is important because if it's a company's fault, if it's an operational spill, then companies are not just required to clean up the spill, but they are required to compensate local communities for that. So because the fault sits with them, they have to compensate local communities. And sometimes local communities have been compensated in the order of billions of dollars. And that is as well results of organizations like Amnesty pushing and advocating and going to court with these companies to make them compensate communities. So cause is important because it could result in compensation. Location of the spill was important because we needed to know what are the hotspots of these spills. Are there communities that are constantly affected by spills? Where we can maybe point to negligence. Companies would know that this is a hotspot, it happens all the time, and they are not securing the pipelines, they are not maintaining the pipelines, right? So again, was important. Then we focused as well on analyzing the pictures. So not just extracting information from the documents, but also corroborating that with the pictures on site. And we found that very often pictures were not telling anything. Like often, the pictures should be at least of the pipeline that caused the spill. But often there were like wide shots of the forest, of the groves. It was like just beautiful pictures, you know, but had nothing to do with the spill. So based on this analysis, what we could do is identify spills that we are asking now the government to investigate again. So defining the task was important. Making the tasks really easy for people to participate was important. So what we ended up having were 3 little projects. So we looked at the cause. We called it Little Project Decode the cause, Little Project Decode the location, and Little Project Decode the image. So we didn't ask people. It was really simple. You opened the document. We highlighted for you the area you need to look at, and a very simple question. Can you extract the cause? Can you extract the location of the spill? So yeah, that was the work around defining the methodology. Now that we knew what we needed to do, we had to go get the data from the company website, right? So I told you they published the PDFs and the images on their websites. So we had to go scrape all this data. Now, super important, before you go scrape data, check the terms and conditions, right? Guess what the terms and conditions of Shell said? That we can only print 1 single copy of documents or look at it on the screen, that we cannot download any pieces of information in bulk from their websites. So what do you do in these kind of cases? Obviously, you want that data, but the company very specifically tells you that you can't do it, and they have terms and conditions that don't allow you to do that. So luckily in Amnesty, we have a legal team, and we went with this to the legal team, and it's like, okay, what do we do now? We really want this document. We want to get them all in bulk, downloaded from their website. We don't want to rely on the fact that they will keep these documents online and that they will be kept exactly in the same way, especially while the project is running, right? So we want, yeah, our lawyers luckily were amazing and told us that these documents are public interest documents and actually do not belong to Shell because they are the result of an investigation that is a joint investigation with community members, with local governments, with other organizations on the ground. So they do not belong to a single organization, so they cannot actually have these terms and conditions on their website. And if they sue us, good for them. Really good media coverage for us. So we decided to go ahead, get all the data from it, archive it. We could have used their own server, document server for our platform, and it could have been good because we would have sent lots of traffic all of a sudden to this document. So, you know, nobody ever looks at these documents on their website, and all of a sudden you have tens of thousands of requests to view the documents. And we thought that could have been a pretty cool campaigning against Shell and Eni. But we also didn't want to rely on them turning off the tap. You know, they could have said, Amnesty is looking at these documents, you know what, let's take them down for a month and then we'll put them back up when they finish their campaign. So we obviously, took them down, archived them, and then we had to go through a process of, pre-processing the data, just understanding how these documents are. And guess what? Shell and Eni were really keen to make people's lives really hard in analyzing the documents. So we had to do a little bit of a pre-project with a small amount of volunteers to see how these templates vary over time. And we saw that every year, year and a half, they would completely change the order of the questions on their questionnaire, on their forms. They would completely change the format. They would sometimes change the questions altogether. So yeah, we did this analysis where we analyzed, we saw that each company, each Shell and Eni had like almost 10 to 12 templates, so they were changing constantly. I don't know if they did it on purpose, but we had to go through this pre-processing exercise. And that would happen on any kind of project. You can't just put data out there. You have to clean it. You have to understand it. You have to understand, again, like what is the task and so on. All right, the third step. So you got your questions. You got your data. Now you have to build the tool. So we had a whole platform. It sits on decoders.amnesty.org. A whole platform that, you know, has these documents. Each document is what we call an asset. So each document has some tasks attached to it. Now we want to extract the location, we want to extract the cause, we want to analyze the image. So these tasks have to be served to people that request us. So volunteers come on the platform, they log in and say, okay, I'm ready to contribute. So then we have to give them one of these tasks. We have to record their answer and then give them another one if they are willing to contribute more. So it's not straightforward. There's lots of available tools out there that are open source that you can use, but it's not straightforward. So we needed a team. Our team consisted of developers, designers, data scientists, and we also worked within Amnesty with researchers, with communications experts that can promote the project and so on. So yeah, super important to have a team working on this. I've seen projects like this with very small teams, but they weren't very impactful. So if you have a proper team, then you can have really good impact. Then you choose the tech stack. I'll take you through some options of technologies you could use. And my very strong advice is to invest in user experience. And again, I've seen lots of projects like this, and the best ones are the ones that have a very strong focus on user experience and design. When we launched the projects, every time we launch a project, the #1 comment we get is, it's so pretty. It looks so good. So if it looks good and people have a smooth experience, those are the only comments you'll hear, and that's what you want. You don't want to hear like, it's buggy, it doesn't work, I don't understand how to contribute, I don't understand why I need to contribute. So really investing in user experience, and for any projects, it's mega important. For any projects that involve having people looking at your project, super important to invest in UX. So these are some tools you could use. We published a research on microtasking. So if you Google microtasking, you'll probably have this research popping up for you. So we take you there through some tools. The tool we used initially was this tool called Pybosa, which is like probably the easiest to use tool. It's open source. It also comes with a company that provides services around it. So you can either, if you have techies in your company, you can install it and you can run it in-house. Or if you have a bit of budget, you can pay this organization called SciFabric to do it for you. We moved away from that because it didn't scale enough for us. We're now using a tool called Hive that was developed by the New York Times for this project Madison that I talked to you about at the beginning. This is also open source, also available online, really easy to use. So it really depends what you want to do. You have to ask yourself some questions. You know, how do you want your platform to react? For example, you might want to decide whether you want anonymous users or not. We had anonymous users in all our projects until this one that we're running now, which is called Troll Patrol. We're not allowing anonymous users because we're afraid that we'll be trolled on a project called Troll Patrol, right? We're inviting it. So you have to decide that. You have to decide, you know, what kind of data formats you want to have, which language you want to host it in. Do you want it to be mobile responsive or not? So several tools allow you to do several things. So you have to go through that and decide which tech stack you want to use. All right, then the next step, so you got your data, you got your questions, you got your tool built, you need to launch and engage users. Now, obviously, traffic on the website is directly proportional with the promotion you're running. So the more promotion you're running, the more people visit your website, the more people contribute. We've experimented with emails, ads, social media. It's really good for us to have media coverage, working with partners, working with universities. So try to promote your project as widely as possible so that people know about it and they contribute. Then in terms of engagement, one thing that we've done and had really amazing results and was completely unexpected was to attach a discussion forum. So while people were doing tasks, we allowed them to discuss these tasks with others. So if you had a doubt or if you want to flag something important, so for example, in the satellite images, people wanted to tell us, hey, really look at the satellite image, I'm seeing a fire, or look at the satellite image, I think I'm seeing a refugee camp, or I think I'm seeing like a secret military base in this one. So they wanted to talk to us, they wanted to tell us some interesting details they found, and we gave them that option by embedding a forum into our platform. Again, there we're using an open source tool called Discourse. It's really good, can't recommend it enough. But that also means that, yeah, we have direct real-time feedback from people. Like if something is broken, they tell us in 1 minute that we fix it the other. They give us also amazing feedback in terms of, you know, how they feel they can actually contribute to something. And it's just really good to be there with users while they are using your tool and get that depth of engagement with them. The 99.1% model, it's a kind of average model of engagement. So 90% of your users will do few tasks, let's say 5 to 10 tasks. So nobody does just one, people keep going, but you know, most of the users will do a little bit. 1% will do quite a lot, so you'll have those super engaged users. You always have those, they're amazing, they are so passionate, they are so with you, they believe in you so much that they will be there with you. For example, this 1% we engage in moderating the forum. We ask them to join us, to answer questions, they get to talk a little bit more with our researchers, we mentor them, and we really make use of their passion and of their engagement to help us work with others. And those 9% are people that do quite a lot, that come back. So yeah, this is a sort of engagement, a model you can use to calculate, you know, how many tasks or how many documents can I liberate with an audience that will be this big. And then finally, gamification works. We've experimented with different models, so showing people how much they've done, how much the whole community has contributed, showing them progress, how much more you have to do. This works really well, and what I love about our audience was that they were not motivated that much about the personal gamification features, so like, you've done this many tasks, but they were more interested to see, as a community, how much they do. So they are really, really community-driven, our users, which is amazing. I think we're very lucky. Right, finally, verify, analyze, and publish. So after your engagement, and typically projects run for about a month, on an average. Sometimes they can run quicker, sometimes you need more time to get through all the tasks, but that's the average. When you get all the contribution back, what you need to do is verify this contribution. So a single task, like a single document in our case, was seen by multiple people. And we had as well experts contributing. So what we had to do was to see to what extent the community agrees on a certain question, to what extent the community agrees with experts on a certain question. So we have to run some statistical models to understand that. And sometimes there are questions that people don't agree, and we might have to put those to experts, or we might have to leave that data on the side and only use the one that we can verify. So this is what we published at the end of the project. We published a report that we called Negligence in the Niger Delta. So we could point to negligence on behalf of these companies. We could point to a number of spills that we asked for them to be investigated, where we didn't think that the companies provided enough information about the cause of the spills. And we think they said these spills are the cause of the fault of the community. So the community sometimes taps into the pipelines and steals oil. So these companies say that most of the spills are that reason. So poor them, they are doing everything they can, but these wild Africans are tapping into their pipelines and stealing their oil. But we could point to specific cases where we think they didn't provide information to support their claims, and where we think it was their fault and they were trying to blame communities. So now these spills are being reinvestigated. Obviously, we mapped the spills, we did really cool visualizations, and we engage, we produce different outputs for different audiences. The report is an advocacy report, and we use it to pressure Shell, to pressure the companies, to pressure the government. We did a story page with like nice visualizations from for people who contributed and for people who are interested in the project. We did GIFs for the social media audience and so on. So we're trying to package information in different ways for different audiences. So yeah, that's it about this project. And now we're running, right now, we're running this project called Troll Patrol, which is around online violence against women. We produced a report, a 16 months research into online violence against women. We interviewed women, journalists, politicians, activists, who are using Twitter to express their opinions, to talk about their work, and who are silenced by people who abuse them. With sexist remarks, with racist remarks, and often with death threats, rape threats. And we're telling companies that companies, especially Twitter, that they are not doing enough to stop this abuse and to protect women and to protect their freedom of expression. But they don't care that much. And they don't share with us any information about the number of reports they get, about their action, so they don't really share that with us. And what we wanted to do is demonstrate the scale of abuse. So we launched this project where we're trying to analyze 500,000 tweets, which are a representative sample of tweets that have been sent to women politicians and journalists from the UK in the past year. And we're trying to see the scale of abuse they receive, the type of abuse they receive. We're trying to see who are the perpetrators. We're trying to see whether we can do something to stop this, and we're trying to use the data to pressure Twitter. We're also trying to see whether we can develop a little machine learning algorithm based on this data to have live analysis of tweets and understand abuse like that. So we're just asking people to read one tweet and answer a super quick question. Can you read the tweet and tell us whether the content is problematic or abusive? We distinguish between content that is problematic, maybe swear words, maybe insults, and content that is abusive, that targets one's personality, individuality. We've seen that women are abused. The more they have intersectional identities, the more they are abused. So if you are a transgender woman of color, then you get a lot of abuse, more so than white women. So yeah, that's the project we're running now. You have posters of the project. Please do share with your friends, get them to participate. The more people we have, the better it is. The more people that care about online abuse that participate, obviously, the better it is. Because again, like, one of the risks we identified with this project is being trolled by men's rights activists. I don't know, Russian trolls. So we want genuinely interested people to participate so that we can have a really good project. So that's it from my end. I want you guys to have my contact details. Please get in touch. Let me know if you have any questions. And I think we have about 20 minutes for questions from you guys. Yeah? Grina. There you go.
Thank you, Milena. This is really fascinating. Thank you for the presentation. I'm inspired. I was wondering whether when you scraped the data from Annie and Shell, did you hide your IP just to protect the identity of the scraper, in case they would be alerted? Thanks.
That's a really good idea. No, we haven't done that. And the reason we haven't done that is we had a really bad developer working with us at the time. Otherwise, it's a really good idea, and we should have, yeah. We should have been really careful at the time of collecting the data, because then obviously we made quite a lot of noise around it, around the project, around the campaign, and we wanted Shell to know that it's us doing this. But while you're preparing a project, while you're working on it, you want to keep your cards close to your chest. So that would have been a really good idea, but...
I'm saying that because one of the media outlets I'm currently working for was pretty much... We had our IP banned by North Korean government.
Of course you had. Yeah? Do you want to introduce yourself? Sorry, I knew Krina and then just call her by her name, but it would be good to know your names.
Yeah, sure. My name is Maika.
Yeah?
I'm a student and also working for a newspaper in Holland.
Yeah.
And we're just recently tapping into, data journalism, investigating. And do you have any advice on educating the people in the newsroom who are not familiar with data to put some money in it, because you can do amazing things? And how can you make them aware of what data can do? How do you make them spend the money? Yeah.
Well, fundraising is obviously the hardest part, and you have to have projects that are worth investing. So I don't think you can ask people for money for broadly data journalism. But if you can think of projects you want to run, like important projects that add social value that you want to run, and you can articulate those projects in proposals and maybe crowdfunding campaigns or anything like this, but you have to have a very strong value proposition. When you go asking for money, you have to win their hearts before asking them to open up the wallet. So it's obviously a complex thing to do, and I don't work in journalism, so I don't know who are the donors. But you might also want to experiment with, like, yeah, I think crowdfunding could be a good option. And if you do have an important story you want to break, I think people will be behind that. Any other questions? Sam, you had a question as well, right?
Yeah, I'm Sam from Amnesty.
Can you use the mic?
Sorry. I was interested about the advice you might have for smaller organizations, especially around the legal help. So Amnesty was able to go to the lawyers and say, who were then able to say, you know, these terms and conditions are rubbish, you can just ignore them. I think for smaller organizations that's really hard, and the terms and conditions are phenomenally daunting. So what advice would you have for smaller organizations trying to do things like that?
Well, I worked as well in small organizations, and it's really hard. I have to say, working for Amnesty International is amazing because you have so many resources. You have people that are dedicated to the social media, people that do legal advice, people that do communications, people that do research. So you have all these resources you can go to and ask them to work with you, which you don't have in a small organization. So it's much harder. You have to be a really multi-talented person working on everything at the same time. But I do think what is important is to build your network. You know, you're here, the Journalism Festival, you meet a lot of people, and you keep in touch with them, and then when you need help, you have your person, you have your go-to person, you know, you pick up the phone and say, hey, you're a lawyer, I have this problem, what do you advise me? And also there's lots of legal firms that provide free legal advice, but I think what's important is for you to know you need that legal advice. So to know that you read the terms and conditions, and you don't have to maybe listen to everything they say, you might be able to contest them. So I think it's not getting the legal advice that is hard, but it's knowing you need the legal advice, and knowing that that shouldn't stop you. That you can still maybe go ahead if you have somebody advising you. So I think that's the more important thing. Please.
You mentioned free legal advice organizations. There's one, Thomson Reuters Foundation has a branch. It's called Trust Law, and they usually go around the world and they source from lawyers a free number of hours of legal advice for NGOs. As long as you're an NGO, not a person, you might be able to knock at their door and volunteer their support.
There you go. Thank you, Karina. Anybody else, any questions? Yeah, thank you.
I was wondering if you've ever considered offering anything to people for their participation, or if you really just focus on the personal value people get from contributing.
So there's models in the business world. I don't know if you guys ever heard of Mechanical Turk. So this is a professional microtasking platform set up by Amazon as a service for businesses. So if as a business you want, so there's apps, for example, I don't know if you ever used Expensify or apps that process your receipts. So you might think that there's some magic artificial intelligence behind those. You take a picture of them, and in 5 minutes you have everything, you know, all the fields recognized, the value, the currency, the shop, and whatever. Well, that is not fancy machine learning. That is Mechanical Turk. It's people from India, very likely, that are looking at that receipts and filling in a form saying it's a receipt for $12 from this coffee shop, from whatever. So companies can buy services like this. So there are micro workers around the world, people that, you know, live with salaries from this kind of companies, and they are paid few cents per task. Obviously, that's not a viable model for us, and it's not something that we would do because the engagement part as a campaigning and advocacy organization, the engaging part is invaluable for us. We want people to participate because they care. And we want people that are interested in human rights and maybe are a bit tired of signing petitions or liking us on Facebook and want to do something more meaningful. That's what we're giving them, an option to do something more meaningful, to work directly with our researchers and to contribute to a report we launch and contribute to a research piece and really expose as well our methodology, expose the evidence we use. And they find it fascinating, they don't want more. But what they do want is recognition. So we work with them on the forum, we thank them, we answer the questions. So you can't just ask people to contribute and let them be. You have to be there with them while they do the project. And especially if they have questions, you have to answer those. So I think that's what we offer people. Any other question? Yeah? Thanks.
Hi, I'm Atika from the UN University. Thanks for the great presentation.
Thank you.
I was just wondering, in terms of engagement, is there a specific target audience that you're looking at, or are you really just trying to engage the general public? Because,
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, at the UN University, we're basically a network of hundreds of researchers and academics serving the UN, and we also have an advocacy part, an advocacy element that I think needs to be awakened a bit more, and it would be great to see such a collaboration.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. I mean, obviously, if you have a network of people already that you can engage, these projects are amazing. It's quite hard to cast a wide net and have people participating. So for each project, we do audience analysis and we build our personas, who is the person that we want to participate in this project. With the Troll Patrol project we launch now, we're trying to talk to feminist groups, to women's rights groups, obviously people that know the problem and want somebody to do something about it and are really willing to contribute. So that's a very specific type of project that has a very specific kind of audience. But otherwise, so Amnesty has sections around the world, so we are also a network of organizations. And through our sections, we reach out to people from all over the world. Our audience is global, and our audience is amazingly diverse. We have a 12-year-old that I'm trying to get to stay away from the Twitter project, through to people in their 80s. We have, and in particular, it goes really well with older people because they are retired, they are home, they are passionate, they are the people that actually care about human rights, and have a lot of time on their hand, and they are super happy to participate. We had people with disabilities that couldn't leave their homes, that were extremely grateful that we're doing this project that they can do from home, and they can feel like valuable, and they feel like they participate. And on that forum, nobody knows they have a disability, and they are treated equally like everybody else. We were advised to reach out to people on an autistic spectrum, for example, because they would be like really keen to do lots of tasks, one after the other. We are working with students as well. So really, we have such a diverse audience, but it is important for every project to think about the personas, to think about, is there a specific audience that I really need to reach out with this project? And where do they hang out? Where can I find them? How can I tell them this project is happening? Thanks. A couple more questions in the back. Sorry, you're seeing beautiful Natural History Museum.
Hello, I'm Claudio. I was just curious on the gamification process and the fact that you say the community were getting a feedback rather than a personal one. How has been engineered and how it works?
The gamification?
Yes.
So it's connected with our MICROTASKING platform. So the MICROTASKING platform has a long list of tasks that we need to distribute to people. Each task has to go to more people, and each task can't be done twice by the same person. So that's the kind of basic logic of the microtasking philosophy. So this is a database that holds information about how many tasks have been done, how many times, by how many people. So we just have to query this database to pull out progress. So progress would be, it's one type of progress, how many tasks have you done? How many tasks has the whole community done? What is the progress of the project? How many tasks do you still have to do? How many people are participating in total from how many countries? So metrics like this really engage people. So as you do tasks, we would tell you how many you've done and how much more we need to go. So this kind of gamification features we use, and again, we experimented with different things, and because we have access to users on the forum, we could ask them as well. We could get really direct live feedback, so we understood what works best, what doesn't. So putting too much of an emphasis on personal achievement with these kind of projects that are so socially driven is not a good idea. Also, we've made mistakes with gamification. We had a project where we asked people to read urgent action campaign materials, which were talking about people in danger. So, you know, it would be like somebody's about to be imprisoned, or somebody's in prison, help us save them, or somebody's on death row, help us save them, and so on. So some of these documents were talking about people having been executed. And we had this pop-up. Every time somebody did it to us, it was like, great work, well done. And like they were reading death penalty cases and were like, great work. So we got feedback that that's not okay. And we stopped it. So you can overdo it as well with gamification, I can say. There were some more questions in the back, right?
Sophia here. Just connected to the previous question, how much of your audience that participates in the project is actually from, let's say, the underdeveloped world countries? And how much is it actually from the developed world in percentage more?
I don't think we run any percentages, but we have lots of people from the developing countries because most of the projects we've done, so Darfur, Nigeria, we tried to get people, locals, that can help us. And we have, again, because Amnesty is internationally spread, we have reach to people from all over the world, which is amazing. So on the Niger Delta project, we had so many Nigerians contributing. And it was amazing because they could answer questions we couldn't answer, because they were living there on the ground, and they could tell us about their experience living in such a polluted area. And they could encourage people to participate more with their testimony, with saying, yes, it's true. Yes, it's true, we cannot fish anymore in our village. And we have signs saying we can't fish, we can't bathe, we can't use natural resources around us because they are polluted. And that motivated people to participate. So we do have quite a big audience. There's some challenges in terms of connectivity. So some of the projects are image heavy and they are slower on low bandwidth connectivity. We are trying to make the projects all mobile responsive, available on mobile, because half of our audiences use mobile, and in the developing world more so. So we're trying to kind of engineer it as well in a way that works for everybody, but we're also actively reaching out to audiences in the Global South. Yep.
Hi, I was wondering if you could tell us a bit more about the verification process. Yeah, just in general. You mentioned really briefly that you have some algorithms running or something, but could you tell us a bit more? Yeah, sure.
So, as I said, every task is done multiple times. To understand how many times a task has to be done before being verified, because it's very different from project to project. You need relatively lower number of contributions on very objective tasks, such as read this document and tell me the date that is written there, or like tell me the cause that is written there. So this is a very simple task, and you have very low errors, unless you are being trolled or something, but we haven't been on that project. So what we do, we run small tests before running projects to understand how many times the tasks need to be run, how many opinions we need around it. And then we also have, while the project is live, we have experts contributing so that we can assess not just how people agree with each other in the crowd, but also how they agree with our experts. And we use algorithms that are called intercoder reliability, so that comes from statistics and from research. Every time you have multiple people contributing around the same thing, you want to run basically algorithms that tell you to what extent people agree. So you end up having a percentage of certainty. Now, we do as well lots of manual verification. Like once we have the data, you can just go through it and see randomly whether it works or not. And some projects are more visual than others. Like the Darfur one, we could map all the contributions on a map, and we could literally go through the map and see the accuracy, as I said, randomly. Like this one with the oil spills was a bit more complex, because you had to open sometimes documents and see whether they match the contributions. But we have really good accuracy rates. We had so far I'm a bit scared about the Troll Patrol project because it's a bit more subjective. The way people interpret problematic and abusive content can vary. But so far we had 80 to 90% accuracy on projects. So that means there's a bit of data that we might not be able to use, or we need the experts again to look at it. But overall we had really good accuracy rates. All right. I think unless you guys have another question, yeah, there's an, okay, cool.
Okay. Hi, my name is Camilo, I'm a data journalist. I just wanted to know, for your experiences, you already have done several of these projects, what are like the most common mistakes or pitfalls that you can make when you're starting for the first time in a project like this?
To do a project like this. The hardest thing is to find right developers. It's really having the right team, working with the right people. It's like if you have the right people to work with, you know, any mistake is easily fixed. You know, we experimented with different things. I mean, you might say we've made mistake. We say that we experimented because we wanted to see how is this tool reacting. For example, when we used this tool called Pybosa, it was quite slow and it didn't scale. We had a project that was really popular, DECODING 4. On that project alone, we had over 1.2 million contributions. And they were happening in a very short amount of time, in like 2 weeks. So we had so much traffic and so many people requesting tasks that we weren't fast enough distributing the tasks, and some bits of the tools were like broken because we had so many requests on the database. So this was a problem, and it's a problem that might happen to other people, but you know, you can fix it if you have the right people to help you choose another technology stack and to work around that. But we had as well problems really picking the wrong people, picking developers that are maybe good developers but don't understand anything about social change. They are not interested in your project. They are not listening to what you really need, and they are doing you know, whatever they want. So I think that is, in my experience, the hardest bit. Obviously, you need a budget and you need a team. You can do it on a shoestring, but it's harder. And as I said, like if you are to invest in something as well, invest in UX and have like a good experience for users. All right, one last question and then we have to wrap. Go for it. Do you want me to put up again the email? Yeah, there you go. Can you put up the presentation again? Right, email is here. Yep.
Hello, hi. I'm Karen Fleeting from Trinity Mirror. I wondered, firstly, like how you measure the impact from these campaigns, and secondly, how you or do you sort of feed that back to the people who participated? Like, are they on a mailing list, or how do you stay in touch with them after they've contributed?
Yeah, of course. So the most important impact measurement is whether you have your data analyzed at the end and whether that's good enough for research. Because that was our goal to start with, was to engage people so that we have like really good data, compelling data that we can use in our evidence-based advocacy and research. So if we get that at the end, that's already a great success. Obviously, numbers of people engaged, the amount of time they spend on site. So in DECODING 4, we had like amazing over 10 minutes on site per person. That never happens in journalism. If you guys work with analytics, it's really hard to get people to look at your page for 10 minutes. You know, the number of tasks they do, the degree to which they are engaged with you, the feedback we receive from the forums, all these help us understand whether we were successful or not. And in terms of communicating with them, yeah, that's really important in the engagement process. So we want to close that engagement loop and tell them at the end what we've done with their contributions. So we have 3 different types of feedback. So there's immediate feedback. We close a project, we put up stats. We've processed this many documents in this much time by this many people that dedicated this many hours doing this project. So we have like immediate stats that we can put up right after closing a project. Then we have the medium term, you know, when we might produce a report and we tell them, hey guys, we just produced a report and we, you know, that was based on your work. So such as the Niger Delta report that we put up. And then there's the long term, which is human rights impact, which is really hard to achieve. So if we do manage to get Shell to really clean up every single spill they do, and we'll let people know, but it's hard. And it doesn't depend on a single project. We email people back if they allow us to email them back. As you know, there's consent issues. So they register on the platform and we ask them, do you want us to email you? If they do, we email them. If they don't, we can't. But we would put updates on the platform. We would put updates on social media, so hopefully people still hear about it. I think they are telling me to wrap. I want to thank you all for participating and for the amazing questions.